I started this channel to document my journey as I try to achieve personal and creative fulfillment. Filmmaking is one of the many skills I've always wanted to learn, but it's also one that I've been pouring off for more than a year now while waiting to acquire better gear. Oh well, where's the fun in that anyway? Let's see what I can make with what I have. What you just watched is actually day 7 of the challenge. It's the accumulation of most of the things that I've learned so far. So let's go back to how it started to see how I got here. Filmmaking is a complex art form that combines multiple disciplines, and my goal through this video is to end up at a point in which I can comfortably grow and eventually master it all by practicing and just making my videos, which is why I will be focusing on picking up the fundamentals, starting with what I believe is the foundation of anything visual: framing and composition. Every video is composed of sequences, which in return are composed of scenes, and scenes are composed of shots. And to be completely honest with you, until some hours ago, I thought there were only 3 types of them: wide shots, medium shots, and close-up shots. But after a bit of research, a couple of tutorials, and some practice, I now know 6 more. We have the establishing shots, the rule of thirds, symmetry, a frame within a frame, negative space, and finally lead-on lines. And the funny thing is that this is where the filmmaking rabbit hole started to show, because within shots are multiple other elements that come at play. We have angles, points, shapes, color and tone, depth, and more. The reason why I used to think that framing and composition is the foundation of it all is because it basically dictates the visual. But the deeper I dove into it, the more I realized that it's about a lot more than just that. Using the right shot at the right moment and combining all of those elements correctly is what will allow me to emphasize what is important, create visual balance, and most importantly, correctly portray emotions and set the right mood in my videos. But there is one thing that can single-handedly dictate how good your visuals are, no matter how creative you get with all of that, and that is lighting. This is how I usually light my videos. I got 2 key lights right here, lighting my face, and they're positioned pretty close to me to avoid them spending too much on the background to keep a decent amount of contrast, which helps me as the person who's talking stand out. I additionally have this light on the background that helps me set a bit of an atmosphere that I sometimes combine with this blue LED light right here to complement its warm orangish tone. What I'm trying to learn today is how to use light to create certain moods in my videos. Maybe I want to make a scene in which I look like a sketchy scientist in a sketchy lab making sketchy chemicals. Maybe I want to make a scene in which my alarm goes off and I wake up. Or maybe I just want to make something overly dramatic or want to focus on one specific thing. If you saw clips laid on top of what I just said, it means that I was successful in what I set out to do today, and this is how I did it. If not, regardless, this is what I learned today. When I started watching lighting content and tutorials, my first impression was that this might be the least budget-friendly and most gear-dependent part of filmmaking. People are out there working with tube lights, spotlights, softboxes, diffusers, reflectors, cookies, egg crates, haze machines, and God knows what else. Meanwhile, I'm out here working with this. And it was a bit discouraging at first, to be honest, until I decided to stop being a little bitch and started practicing. The first practice scene was pretty simple and was lit exclusively using my phone. First shot is a top-down view of my phone in complete darkness. The alarm goes off, turning the phone on and creating a source of light, followed by a shot of me getting up, being slightly lit by my phone's lock screen until I unlock it and get blinded by the sudden rise in light intensity. The second practice scene was the dramatic one. I initially wanted to go for a pretty simple shot with a high contrast lighting, but eventually decided to go for something a bit more spicy and intense. Once again in complete darkness. First shot is me lighting a lighter, purposefully failing the first strike to make it more dynamic, and using it to light a bunch of candles. The second shot is a handheld shot of me pouring the candles closer to my face to reveal it. And the last one is another handheld shot of me opening a door and using the candles as a source of light to explore the room that I made sure to mess up to make things a bit more unsettling. The third practice scene was the hardest, especially that I had to experiment with a lot of different options, which wasn't really easy with how quickly my camera overheats. But this is what yielded the best results. First shot is an establishing shot that captures me in what is supposed to be a lab. It's lit using a single light set on a top-down angle to emulate the type of artificial lighting you would find in a lab, and it's set on a pretty low level of brightness to keep the room dark and gloomy. Additionally, I used a green LED light and some smoke to try to create a bit of a chemical vibe. By the way, huge shout out to this guy for the burning incense trick. It's a huge alternative if you don't have a hazing machine. Just make sure to buy good quality stuff, because the cheap shit I got gave me one hell of a headache. It actually smelled like chemicals. But anyway, the second shot is closer and is focused on the bottles and me mixing what is supposed to be chemicals together, and it keeps the same lighting as before to maintain continuity. And finally, the last shot is a close-up of what is supposed to be the final concoction. I've lit it using my phone's flashlight on the background and the green LED once again, which also checks the last practice scene in which I wanted to showcase one specific thing. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the first 2 days is how much of a game changer problem solving can be in filmmaking, which is really thrilling because that is one of my favorite things to do, unfortunately for my wife. And what I've done so far, I've noticed two major restrictions: filming space and lighting equipment, and this day would be focused on overcoming those using anything that I can think of, starting with the easiest one of them. That highly depends on who you ask, to be honest. Whenever I'm filming at home, I'm usually limited to this room right here because I'm not really a big fan of the overall aesthetics of the house. But since having flexibility in where you can set up your shots is pretty important in filmmaking, there are actually two spots where I live that I wish I could take advantage of more often. And the first one of them is actually in this room, and it's this corner right here where our cats usually hang out, that I could technically set up as another filming corner if it wasn't for that wall closet that has mirrors as doors, which can be pretty convenient sometimes. And the second one is this sofa corner we have that has such an ugly ass wall in the background. And the thing is, it's not my house and I'm too broke to get them changed, so it's time to find alternatives. My first idea was to get a large piece of wallpaper and stick it temporarily with some tape, allowing me to change it depending on what kind of look I'm trying to set. But I quickly realized that they only sell those in rolls and that they're pretty expensive. So I jumped on Pinterest looking for some inspiration and came across this, which kind of reminded me of how my sister's room looked with all the posters she had. I don't know where to get posters here, and it would cost too much to print enough to cover that kind of surface, but that was enough to remind me of exactly what I need. Newspapers. Newspapers are affordable, they can look pretty cool, and they're disposable. Meaning that if I feel like it, I can just do this. But let's imagine for a second that your house is completely unsalvageable. Well, in that case, you can use your friend's house. And if you don't have one of those, well, you can always step outside. I know that hearing that will probably discourage and stress out a lot of you. Trust me, I've been there, which is why I will leave a video in the description that will kind of show you how I managed to personally overcome that. Now that I'm back home, it's time to address the elephant in the room: improvising lighting equipment. Please don't report me to the funny police. I'm not going to try anything crazy yet, since the last time I messed with wires, things didn't turn out that great. But I figured that I might be able to mimic a fraction of the power of certain tools using some tricks. This started from a video I watched in day 2, in which I learned that you can mimic a top light by filling black trash bags with helium, using them to make a circle on the ceiling and pointing a spotlight in the middle. I don't have helium, I don't have black trash bags, and I don't have a spotlight, but I do have a light bulb in the room. I have some trash bags that are somewhat dark and some tape, and I'm going to try to find out if this would be enough to do something like that. This is what it looks like without anything, and this is what it looks like with the setup. I mean, it's not crazy, but it inspired me to think outside of the box and try to see if I can find any cool ideas, which I did. If I take my phone, some tape, and an empty roll of toilet paper and stick them together, I get a spotlight that works pretty well in low light. My lights don't have a massive temperature range, which sucks when I try to match them to this one as an example, so I threw a yellow shirt on it and that did the trick. It also works with some other colors, which can be pretty useful. Additionally, a piece of fabric can be a diffuser, and a sheet of aluminum, paper, or styrofoam can be a reflector, which is great for creators like me who are on a budget. Day 4. Sound design. Every time you're watching something, you're using two specific senses: sight for the visual and hearing for the sound. Sound design tends to be underestimated by creators, even though it plays a huge supportive and psychological role when it comes to immersion. I myself, even when aware of its importance, tend to treat it as this last thing that I do at the end of my editing process. I usually just slap around a couple of music tracks that kind of make sense with the vibes, sprinkle in a couple of sound effects and call it a day, because I never sat down to truly understand the logic and process behind it. But today is the day that changes. I'm planning to do that over 3 steps. Number 1, I will try to understand the logic behind sound design and its best practices. Number 2, I will try to dive into the details of sound, its types and how they're used. And finally, I will practice using some of the scenes that I shot earlier in this journey. For that, I will use sounds that I will record myself and leave stock sound effects as a last resort thing. That way I will train myself not to be that dependent on whatever I can or cannot find online. So with that being said, it's time to get started. After hours of tutorials, sound recording and practice, I'm finally done, and I'm really excited to share with you how it turned out. This is the video with the original sound. And this is how it turned out after the sound design. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of room for improvement, but for what it is, I'm really proud of it. So with that, day 4 is a great success. So as I said last time, I'm pretty happy with how things turned out, but there is one thing that bothers me with the final result, and it's how awkward the cuts feel at times, which is why today I decided to focus on learning transitions. And with that being said, it's time once again to binge watch tutorials. This is the end of day 5, and once again, I learned a lot of things. So it's pretty hard to break down everything I learned into some specific advice or something like that, which is why I will leave the link of every tutorial I watched in the description. But if I had to really give a specific advice or a specific lesson I learned, it would be to really try to take advantage of anything within your frame to make seamless transitions into the next one. I mean, you can use movement, obstacles, light, shapes, and a lot of other things. There are some specific transitions that you can use, but I feel like it's much better to use, once again, the elements to create seamless transitions. But once again, it's only my 6th day into this, so who am I to give advice? But I feel great about today once again. I feel like it was a great success. I definitely have a lot more to learn, but hey, it's time to move on to day number 6. Day 6 will be all about color grading, which is something that I've done before, but that I'm nowhere near being good enough at. Today though won't be about technique, it will mostly be about the tool, because all of my color gradings were previously done on Premiere Pro, but I keep on hearing over and over again that DaVinci is a much better tool for that. So today, I want to find out if it is using 2 simple steps in some of the clips that I recorded earlier. So I will start by color grading some of those clips like I usually do on Premiere Pro. Then I will install DaVinci and go through my usual tutorials ritual. And finally, I will color grade the same clips on DaVinci to see if it's going to allow me to get better looks or if it feels any better. So I'm done, and I'm starting to feel like trying to pick up a tool like this in a single day wasn't my brightest idea so far, because it literally took me an hour to figure out how to get a preview of the clips that I'm trying to grade, and even when I did that, it kind of was too small for me to clearly see what I was doing, and I couldn't figure out how to make it any bigger. But yeah, even though I feel like I did a better overall job on Premiere, I kind of see the potential of DaVinci and why people would prefer it over Premiere when it comes to color grading. So I will definitely continue using it. I just still have a lot to learn, and that will come with time and practice. And I won't have to wait long for that, since day 7 is about putting everything I've learned together to make an intro for this video, which means that this is the end of the video for you. And I would really love to hear what you think about my progress and how I did overall. And if by some chance there is a pro around, any advice is welcome, since I'm still just in the start of my journey. So with that being said, as per usual, thank you for watching and take care.